Rebellion, Book 2 of the Ritual Saga. Written and performed by author Caitlin Costello. Print copyright Caitlin Costello 2019. Audio copyright Caitlin Costello 2021. Chapter 4. Paulo. Paulo cinches up his bag and looks over the pile of things he and Lyra have gathered to take with them. They both woke up with the dawn this morning, so they could have a full day of traveling. Lyra spent most of the night poring over the maps, trying to decide the best way to get to Bulandon. The problem was, there wasn't a best way to travel. There's hard and harder. They chose the path that leads through the forest to the edge of the vast winter plains of Lyra's people. You shouldn't need too much of it at a time, Lyra says to Shauna, holding out a jar of the cream. But if you need any more, ask for Jocelyn's apothecary. She has a couple shops set up across the kingdoms, run by her apprentices. I think it costs 2 gold stones. If she gives you any trouble, you can say you know me. We go back quite a way. All the apprentices know to help a ritual, though, so you shouldn't have any issues. Word has to have gotten out by now that we're being found. Thank you, Shauna says, taking the proffered jar. Paulo already has an identical jar in his bag. No bigger than an apple, made of glass with a wooden lid with a bit of cork at the bottom to keep it airtight. Aside from the distinctive cobalt blue color, the jar gives no indication about what lies within. Paulo pulls the bag over his chest and starts carrying things to where the horses are tied up outside the house. Where do you think you're going? Shauna asks, following him out onto the porch. To the horses? He says, gesturing to the animals. Well, obviously, she replies, a smile playing across her lips. But did you really think you could sneak out without saying goodbye? She crosses her arms over her chest and looks down her nose at him. He knows she's making fun of him, but she looks ridiculous, angling her head like that so she can attempt to look down at him from her perch on the porch. I wasn't going anywhere, he insists. I have to come back in to get a few other bags, so I was going to come back. He throws one of the bags up behind his saddle and ties it off. Sure, you're going to come back in, but that doesn't mean you were going to say goodbye. She pokes him. You might not think I've gotten to know you like that, Master Paulo, but I have you figured out. She laughs. She can't even take herself seriously. Fine, you caught me, he admits, a mirror of her contagious smile splitting his face. But only because I really don't like saying goodbye to people. Come on, you're going to see us in maybe a week. You're going to meet us in Hollands. It'll be 2 days' ride for each of us. So if it's really bad, we can get to you soon. Maybe an extra day, she says, trying to be encouraging. Paulo finishes tying off the bags and lets out a slow sigh. Shauna, that isn't quite what I'm worried about. I know we'll all have a way to get back to each other soon, and we can all take care of ourselves. It's just... No, you know what? It doesn't matter. He turns to focus on measuring his stirrups. No, it does. She steps forward and places a hand on his arm. Her eyes are nothing but serious. Something is bugging you, and I'm sorry I joked about it. What's wrong? He pats her hand. Really, I'm okay. She gives him a look with those piercing gray eyes, and he relents. Okay. I don't like leaving and saying goodbye and stuff, because, well, the last person I said goodbye to was my brother. I told him I would see him again soon, and then he was kidnapped. Shauna's shoulders slump. That's why I didn't want to say anything. I just didn't want other people to feel how I was feeling. No, it's okay, Paulo. She looks up at him. I appreciate when you share these things with me. Not because I enjoy hearing about your pain, but because I know a little bit more about you each time. We get a bit closer. She watches him continue to adjust the straps on his saddle before making him stop. You best stay safe. I'll be okay, you silly human girl. He grins, but he doesn't mean the words. This girl is so much more than a silly girl. You be careful yourself. Glances in the window and sees Philippe watching them. Please watch yourself with him. I still don't know where his loyalties lie. Shauna glances over at the window and smiles at Philippe. I know. I think I can trust him, but I don't know if that's my heart or my brain talking to me. He'd better use this time to show me that he can be trusted. She turns back to Paulo. Besides, it'll only be a little over a week, and then we'll be in Holland's waiting for you. Paulo nods as Lyra comes out of the house, carrying the rest of their supplies. All set? She asks, quickly tying her things onto her saddle. I think so. Just let me do one final sweep of the house, Paulo says, moving back into the house as Lyra and Shauna say their goodbyes. He quickly scans the lightly furnished rooms for anything that might have escaped his pack. He pauses to look at the table where many games were played and discussions had over the last week. When he finds himself back at the door empty-handed, he pauses, the image of Philippe standing and watching them from the window flashing in his mind's eye. Paulo turns back into the house to find Philippe still standing by the window. You don't need to say it, the boy says, not looking away. His body is tense, like he's been waiting for this discussion. Paulo watches him for a moment. Philippe shifts his weight from foot to foot, glancing at Paulo and waiting for his response. Paulo knows deep down that he can't leave without talking to Philippe. Part of the reason he had gone outside was to try to avoid saying goodbye, but the other part was to give Philippe the benefit of the doubt. We both knew that this conversation was coming. I don't want to badger you about it, but if you didn't want to badger me, then you wouldn't bring it up. The whole point is to try to trust me, Philippe says in a lower voice. This is me saying I trust you, Philippe. That I trust you will keep her safe, Paulo says, waving to the window. She's like my little sister. The only family I have left now. Please, don't make me lose her too. That is what I wanted to talk to you about. Philippe turns away from the window. So you didn't want to give me a lecture about not letting the Dark Ones take me over and brainwash me? About not getting kidnapped again? I take it Lyra did that already. The only answer Paulo receives is a low huff. No, you won't get that from me. I know you regret what happened. Show me that you are a better man. Bring her back in one piece. He puts a hand on Philippe's shoulder. Bring back the proof that I can call you my ritual brother. Philippe nods his thanks and puts his hand out to shake. Thank you for having faith in me, Paulo. You're a good man? Or should I say elf? Paulo shrugs and heads out to his horse, where he steps into the stirrups and swings his other leg over with a grace that, by the look of envy on the boy's face, Philippe wishes he could have. See you in Holland's, Paulo says over his shoulder. Then, with a squeeze of his horse aside, he starts their journey. Lyra rides just behind as they hurry into the woods, following a trail that would lead them north, along the base of the mountain ranges. They start at a brisk trot, putting as much distance as they can between them and the house, thus, them and the Dark Ones. The faster they get away from the Dark Ones, the less they need to worry about the trail being traced back. To be safe, and to make sure they can't be followed, they double back through the woods a few times and overlap their own trails. The trees hang low, heavy with leaves and fruit. Paulo reaches up as they pass under a tree and picks off a pear. I didn't know pears were in season this early in the year, he comments. I didn't think they were either. Maybe it's just the area, or they are a special kind. They pause at a fork in the road. Do you remember which way we turn? She asks, digging around in her bag for a map. Paulo shakes his head. I thought that the Y in the road was later on, but I guess not. Amicus said to go to the left for that one. So if this is it, I would guess that's our course. The two direct their horses and keep walking. Paulo notices that his horse sidesteps and stops, growing a bit skittish. He bends and pats its neck. The horse probably isn't used to being away from the farm like this. It certainly wasn't very often that someone came to the house. He notices that Lyra's horse is getting edgy too, flicking his tail back and forth, even though there isn't a fly in sight. You feel it too? He asks quietly. It isn't so much that he feels something. It's more what he doesn't feel. The forest around them is dead. It isn't silent, The sound of birds chirping and bugs humming still fill the air, but it feels hollow in Paulo's ears. Yes, I don't like it, Lyra replies, placing one hand lightly on the handle of her knife. They have to be feeling paranoid, right? They haven't been away from the cottage for more than an hour. It doesn't seem likely that something would ambush them that quickly. Paulo reaches out with his senses, feeling for any alarming reactions in the birds and critters of the earth. None of them react adversely to his touch, accepting him and letting him in. What is going on? He asks them. Why do we feel strange? His green markings flutter down his olive skin, pulsing a brighter green with each thought. The woods answer in a chorus of voices that chime in their many languages in his mind. We feel the darkness, even in the light. It lays heavy in this land. Beware, Earth brother. Is the danger near? Should we fear to travel on in this direction? He probes them. Lyra turns when Paulo stops his horse in the middle of the road, his face skyward, eyes closed. Paulo, what are you doing? He puts up a hand, cutting off the rest of her words, lest she drown out the forest. They lurk in the shadows of the night. But if you walk in the sun, you should be safe, Earth brother. Travel quickly from this forest. Thank you. He opens his eyes to see Lyra looking at him, a question waiting on her lips. I was speaking with the forest, he says simply. They say we should be safe to travel as long as we travel quickly. She nods in agreement, while holding back her many questions. Then what are we waiting on? Let's get going. She nudges her horse down the path, keeping his movements quick. Paulo follows, eyes ever watching the forest around them, ready for whatever might change. About midday, with the sun high above, they come upon a clearing. The sun's light filters weakly through the leaves, casts spots of light on their skin. Paulo and Lyra dismount, removing their horses' bridles so they can graze freely. How much longer should we be in this forest? Paulo asks, looking over Lyra's shoulder at the map she's examining again. I'm not sure. I could have sworn we should have left the forest by now. She looks up, walking around the tree line and scanning the distance, but there is no break in the trees. Can you ask your friends? The forest? He asks. Yeah, I can ask them how to get out. He closes his eyes again, reaching out with soft tendrils of thought to the forest animals. Hello, friend, he says, brushing the consciousness of a little squirrel in the tree above their heads. I'm looking for a way from this forest. It is not my home. Do you know the way? You look for no trees? The squirrel chitters in his ears. No trees? Why? Why do you want no trees? Danger. Danger lurks in the no trees. The squirrel skitters from tree to tree in its fear. For me, these forests are dangerous. I need to find my friend. They are in the land of no trees, Paulo explains. He feels a smile come to his lips. Who would have thought he would have to ask a squirrel for directions? Lyra looks at him expectantly, and he shrugs in response, waiting for the squirrel to answer. Sun. Follow the sun. Go to where the sun goes dark. West, Paulo says, opening his eyes. We have to go west. Go to where the sun goes dark. West? That doesn't lead out of the forest. We need to go east. Your friends must be wrong, she insists, looking over the map again. We are lost, Lyra. We probably overshot our turning point. My squirrel said to go where the sun goes dark. She turns to him with a look of disdain. A squirrel? We are trusting the word of a squirrel. There's a sudden burst of chittering in his ear that Paulo chooses to ignore. He lives here in the forest. He knows how to get out a lot better than we do. I told you what he said. If we go west and get out, then we can go around the edge of the forest line. Then we can see what's around us a lot easier, and we won't have to worry about something creeping up on us. She sighs. Fine, we'll listen to your squirrel and go west. But mind you, if we get more lost, I am blaming you. She grabs her bridle and starts slipping the bit back into her horse's mouth. Well, come on. I still want to get out of this forest by nightfall. I don't want to lose too much more time here. Paulo glances up at the trees and sees his squirrel. Come on, buddy. Let's show her you're a smart little guy. He picks up his bridle and slips it over his bay's nose. The squirrel scampers down the tree and sits before him, waiting for the two of them to leave. Paulo dies laughing at Lyra's shocked face when the squirrel scampers up her leg and sits on her shoulder like a parrot. I told you he was smart. Fine, I'll give you that. She shrugs her shoulders vigorously in an attempt to dislodge the squirrel. He leaps from Lyra's shoulder to Paulo's, where he sits, waiting for his next question. Hi everybody, I wanted to pop in here really quick before we get to the end of this podcast and let you know that I have a sale that is going on currently. And it is a sneaky discount that only a few people know about right now. So good on you for listening to the podcast and hearing about this sneaky discount. And that is 25% off all of my signed print books at CaitlinCostello.com. And that is with the code MOVING, because I am moving at the end of July and I need to reduce some of the stock of books that I have on hand. Unfortunately, I have quite a few books ready for people that were expected to go out last year to book events that sadly were canceled due to the health and safety of everyone around us. But now I need to move them out of my house. So if you would like to get to 25% off of an order, please head over to CaitlinCostello.com and use code MOVING. That is code MOVING for 25% off. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. Okay, goodbye. Hello everyone, it is Caitlin Costello, the author and narrator of Rebellion. I hope you have enjoyed this week's episode. Please don't forget to leave a rating or review on the podcast hoster of your choice. And if you have finished the rituals or Rebellion, please leave a rating or review where you buy books online. If you can't possibly wait until next week for the next episode, I do have signed copies of all of my books available at CaitlinCostello.com, or you can pick them up just about online at any retailer. You could also, if you are not financially able to purchase a book at this time, check out your local library and see if you can place a request to get that book in. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It means more than you know, and I will see you next week. Bye!